everyone, this is Keith Scott from Apple CPR Premium. I'm one of the voices that will manage you loose. It's time to watch Relentless and Unstoppable. And so give it up for your main hosts, Douglas Kelly and Andy McPhee.
Yeah,
Charlie and
I
the Chocolate Factory is a little creepy.
yeah, I think Johnny Depp portrayed Willy Wonka a little bit as if Wonka was autistic.
Well, no, that's not what Charlie and the Chocolate Factory was about. Because you remember at the very end of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, he gives the factory to Charlie, the
That's
kid.
right. Yep.
Yeah, so that's Johnny Depp's character is Charlie. He's grown up and taken over the factory, and he did the same thing that Willy Wonka did, so he can give it to somebody else. But Johnny Depp said that he would go home in his makeup and in his costume, and he would scare the crap out of his children. He's like, I think I traumatized my kids during that time.
Ooh, I did not know that. So yeah, I'm a big fan of movies like you are. I have a lot of favorite movies I like to watch and I don't know if you have seen it, maybe you have, and I would be surprised if you haven't seen it, but do you like the Pirates of the Caribbean movies?
Oh, I love them. We just recently watched them in the last month and a half.
My favorite movie of all time is the first one. I'll never get over Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl.
That one is a good one. That one actually is a really good one. I like the Dead Man Tells No Tales too, because that one's pretty funny, especially when he falls in the pig mud.
Yeah, and I also think that Dead Man's Chest and At World's End were also good, but I
Yeah.
like those ones because of a Davy Jones. You
Yeah.
gotta acknowledge, Cassidy, that Bill Nye played the monster well.
Yes, he did. He did an excellent job playing the monster. My favorite about, I think it was Deadman's Chest, was you remember the scene where Jack Sparrow has the jar of dirt and he's like, "Guy, look what I got. I got a jar of dirt." And he
I
falls
got a
down the
jar of
stairs,
dirt.
but he falls down the stairs. And he's like, "Got it." That actually wasn't supposed to be in the movie. He actually tripped and fell down the stairs and stayed in character, so they kept it in the movie.
Yeah, I remember hearing that. And
So,
then he
so
further
every
improvised it with the sing song, I Got a Jar of Dirt.
Yeah, and everybody's expression was their actual expression. It's like, oh,
I wonder what would have happened if Jeffrey Rush was part of that scene with Barbossa, knowing the rivalry between them. Although they were friends outside of work, by the way. I'm sure Barbossa probably would have looked at Jack with the usual, really kind of look.
yeah.
Yeah. What are your thoughts?
I definitely agree. Barbosa was a really good character. I feel like they did him justice on the way that he kind of went out of the movie.
Yeah.
I feel like they did his character absolute justice, but I'm a little concerned for Jack Sparrow's character because they were talking about bringing somebody else in to play Jack Sparrow, and you
Yeah.
can't exactly do that because Johnny Depp is Jack Sparrow, just like Robert
Mhm.
Downey Jr. is Iron Man.
Yeah.
Um, it and then they were trying to say that they were thinking about trying to bribe him into coming back for one more movie so they can kind of pass it on to his daughter. But Johnny Depp already explained that his character was gay.
Hmm. The other factor of that was obviously the trial with Amber Heard, and that was the trial with Amber Heard, was one of the biggest ones that I've probably ever seen in any sort of celebrity trial. And and we saw how the relationship ended out, and it brings you back to what Donkey says in the movie Shrek. Celebrity marriages, they never last, do they?
My
But that
favorite
was
was
one.
when
But that was one where you're just like, how did they last together that long?
I feel bad for Johnny Depp because Johnny Depp asked for help many, many times.
Yeah.
Like for years he asked for help.
Yeah. I saw that whole thing, how it played out because, the divorce between Johnny and Amber happened literally when my parents' divorce began in 2016. So when I
Yeah.
heard what was going on in the press, I was quick to believe that Johnny Depp was the instigator because of just how my father and mother played out. But and then, it got settled out of court very quietly. And I just sort of moved on. But then it was like 2 years later that we saw how how it then turned into the scandal that it became, and then it turned out that Johnny was innocent, and it turns out that
Mhm.
Amber Heard had BS'd her way into portraying herself as a victim of abuse, and she was the one committing the abuse, and it's like,
Mhm.
whoa, you know.
Well, what kind of messed up the most was that Disney was the first to drop him outside of the Dumbledore
Hmm.
series. Like those were the first two to drop him, and it's just kind of messed up because they fought so hard to get to keep him, like to get him to play those roles to begin with.
Hmm. And then it turns out that, Johnny was innocent and, they tried to make amends, but, and I can't
Like
blame Johnny for this, but he says he's not going to go back because, actions have consequences.
they defamed his name, like
Hmm.
they defamed him during that trial. They ran his name through the mud.
Hmm. And, he's not going to let Disney come crawling back to him like that, when they should have
Yeah.
defended him. And what makes it even more blatant on Disney's end, in my opinion, was, part of the abuse that Johnny suffered at the hands of Amber took place when they were filming Pirates of the Caribbean 5, because he came onto set with his smashed finger from the incident by Amber, and and that should have been like a pretty good sign to Disney that that marriage was not going very well for whatever reason it was, and that Johnny had been the victim of abuse. But when Amber came forward, they were quick to believe Amber just because of the fact that a lot of people took a shine to her. You know what I mean?
But that also has to go with where Disney stands as well.
Yeah.
So
So,
it kind of speaks for itself with, especially with a lot of the new movies that Disney's been coming out with, especially a lot of the live action remakes that they've been doing with like original like classic movies.
yeah.
Um, you can kind of tell where they stand on that. But one of
Mhm.
my favorites is that the movie Mulan, everybody got mad because it's not a musical like the Disney movie Mulan. Well, China was the one that made it and directed it, and they basically said that the Americans weren't the targeted audience. It was Chinese, and they were keeping it traditional to how it was back then. And I think they did the movie justice.
Hmm. Yep, sometimes revamping a movie or rebooting it, sometimes it brings good dividends, because it creates
Mhm.
just as good a story as the original.
And then sometimes when you do the movie, sometimes it just is a complete flop, and it's just kind of like, why would you ever even think of making this?
I'm glad you brought that up because there have been some movies I've seen where you're just like, how did this make it to the big screen? When I was younger, I saw the movie Thomas and the Magic Railroad, which was Thomas the Tank Engine, that movie.
Hmm.
I saw the movie at a young age, and when I heard it was released theatrically, I remember seeing all the sets and all the characters, and I'm like, it looks like a straight to video kind of movie, not something you should have needed to publicize and put on the big screen. And then
Yeah.
I find out years later that they had to do a lot of editing of the movie, thereby taking out most of the story. And it's like, if that's the case, then why did you guys not refilm it?
Well, that's like
Yeah.
Hollywood is a great example of this because even with like war movies and stuff, Clint Eastwood is the epiphany of a historical movie because he actually stays to historical facts. He doesn't care. But if Hollywood, like a lot of these directors, it says based on a true story, you can guarantee that 5 to maybe 12% of it's true, and the rest
Mhm.
of it is just kind of falsified for Hollywood effects.
Uh-huh. That happened with Napoleon.
Hmm.
Napoleon in 2023 was by far probably one of the biggest disappointments I saw in a movie because it was so historically inaccurate that it makes you wonder if Ridley Scott ever made a movie like that again. We better
Yeah.
hope it's not Gettysburg because he'll
Hmm.
probably portray Abraham Lincoln as having fought at Gettysburg, or
Right.
or if
Yeah.
or if it's World War II, he might portray Franklin Roosevelt, the president,
Hmm.
as having fought in the Battle of Berlin.
Yeah, but they have some really good military movies out there. Like The Lone Survivor is a great one because that actually is based on true events. They actually talk to their survivor. Another one would be Hacksaw Ridge is a really good one because that one is based historically accurately and they nailed that out of the ballpark, man.
Saving Private
Um,
Ryan was good.
yeah, and then another one would be War Machine. That
Mhm.
one is with Alan. I don't know his name, but he plays in a Reacher. But he actually went and trained with the Ranger Regiment and held his breath and did everything, but he he did justice to the part 100%, and it was accurate, historically accurate. There was another one, I can't remember the name, but it's something Fury.
Mm-hmm.
That one
Fast
was
and Fury, was
no,
it?
it was something Fury. It was a tank movie.
Oh, yeah,
Just called
I
Fury.
vaguely
It was
remember.
just called Fury.
Yeah, the tank movie.
Okay, it was just called Fury. That one is actually accurate, and they did really justice on that one.
Gee, that's all we have for Relentless and Unstoppable. So tune into the next episode to hear more amazing stories from amazing guests. This is Keith Scott from Sydney, Australia saying so long, and I'm smarter than the average bear. Gee.